Good morning, everybody. It's December 9. I got here at about 9 o'clock this morning. So nice, pretty early. It is cold, guys. It's interesting how it's actually probably a good 10 degrees warmer than it's been about this time every morning. But because it's all cloudy, because of the rain, it feels cold. Whereas in the mornings I've been coming, it's been low 30s in the morning, but the sun has been out. So I guess it kind of warms the body while it's cold outside. I don't know. Anyway, it's quite fresh. Remember yesterday I finished this, but I really didn't. I have to go in and do some caulking, and I'll get some weather stripping around this. It does come with some weather stripping already, like, you know, here all the way around and then down there. In fact, it's good that it's raining. I wanted to see if any rain's going to come in. This did get wet, but I'm not seeing any wetness in the house. That's not going to stop me from reinforcing it, cut down on airflow and cut down on the water getting in, and even bugs and spiders and whatever. All right, so I've never put insulation in my life. Barely seen any. Kind of in the attic of my childhood home is about the only time I've seen it. So I'll be putting it up today, start my learning curve, all that R38 that I brought in yesterday. This place is a mess. I don't have a lot of room to work with, so I'm going to spend the first few minutes just moving everything this way. And then we'll start in the corners here, or this end, and start working our way the other way, this way. And I don't know if you guys remember or not, but I have this guy, my 18 gauge that I just bought with some staples, so I don't have to staple by hand everything. And then, of course, I got the knife that cuts, made for cutting the insulation as well. So guys, there's always this learning curve. After my first framing nail gun from DeWalt, after I got that 16 gauge gun that's DeWalt, it was very similar, so I didn't even really have to read the directions. But this is more of a stapler, 18 gauge stapler. So now I got to go through and make sure it's got these little white brackets on here, things, and here. I got to make sure, do those stay on? Do they come off? How do you load this thing? It's a little bit different. So stay tuned. All right, guys, I had a little bit of a learning curve there. Just so you, I don't know if you've ever used one of these or not, but if you're interested in an 18-gauge stapler, I was taking the staples and putting them here and sliding them in like this, putting them on top. I thought it went inside, but it actually goes in here. You put them in there. Close this. Battery. This is the adjustment for how the depth, and I just kind of played around with that till I got it with the depth I wanted. And now it just became just like the nail guns that I've been using. So pretty cool, but it took me a few minutes to figure that out. I was putting the staples in the wrong spot. All right, back to getting some more tools out here and getting ready. So the next thing I'm unwrapping, I didn't even know there was such a thing. I don't know if you can just cut with any kind of knife, or, you know, you might be able to just cut with a utility knife. I don't know. But this says specifically it's for insulation knife. I think because it's got a longer blade and you got insulation, can be pretty thick. So comes with a little holder. It looks like it can come with a extension pole to be able to cut from further away. I don't think that pole comes with it, but you could probably buy one. All right, guys, I don't know how goofy I look or how this is going to work, but I've been told best to wear a mask. So this is a mask that the electricians gave me. I guess, you know, they get under houses and up in attics and all that stuff when they're doing their electrical work, so they're exposed to insulation probably quite a bit. So I'm hoping this is going to do the job.
I brought some gloves. I have a couple different choices of gloves. I have these kind of cloth ones too that I think fiberglass might get through them. I don't know, but I would be able to use them a little bit more dexterously. So I got this on. I got gloves. I wore a long sleeve shirt. And I also brought my beanie just in case if I want to put that on my head to keep stuff out of my hair. I don't know how it's going to go. And I started to cut this. It's amazing how it expands. It's crazy. I've never seen this before. All new for me. It was actually quite hard to get apart. And I guess it's because they had to really wrap it. You know, you got to wrap it tight. If they wrapped it at the width that it ends up becoming, it'd be a huge, huge load. All right, let me give this a shot. This is EcoBat, so it's not pink like usual, like we're used to seeing. I got a bit of a learning curve. I did learn to cut these on the ground, measure and cut on the ground before getting up there. I was getting up there and cutting them while I was up there, and that doesn't work well. The learning curve is staples ain't holding it. It'll do part of the job. But I think I have to get those. There's something that goes across. And I think I'm going to have to get randomly. I don't know why here, but here, put one across. They're like a stabilizer or whatever keeps that in. I don't know if this is okay that the drywallers can just push up against that, or does it need to be all the way up there? And then I see this stinking gap, which means most likely we'll see what the next one is, but if it ends up being like that, means I'm going to have to put this narrow little strip down the middle. The only thing else I can think of is to start at the top, and then there'll be a gap at the ends there, but I won't have to fill in this little gap. Yes, it doesn't accomplish the insulation there on the corner, but I think this is so smashed up in there anyway, it's not doing a fabulous job. And if that saves me from having to cut all these little pieces, I'll see. I think the next one I'm going to start here and work my way down and see how that works. But I think I'm just about to find out how well staples are going to hold, because this had a lip, so a good portion of that insulation is laying on that 2x6 that's laying there, or a 2x4 that's on its side. Here, there's nothing to support it. It's just staples on both sides. May end up being a short day and have to go get, I don't know if it's the staples I'm using. They are not probably meant for this, but I'm able to put a bunch of them and the paper just rips. So I'll have to check out the intended staples for that too. Maybe they're a different kind of staple. And I really, really hate wearing this because I cannot breathe. So I think after every line, I'm going to open the door, stick my head out, and get some fresh air.
All right, guys, I took this mask off for a minute and my gloves. We won't get into politics, but I don't like wearing masks. And I can't breathe. I don't like it. I feel like I'm suffocating. So anyway, after each strip, I'm taking stuff off for a minute so I can get some oxygen. So the first was a little bit of a learning curve. I started at the ends and worked my way this way, and it left a gap. This time I started in the middle, and it worked better this way. It barely left a gap in that end, and it left a little bit more of a generous gap right here. So this looks like that's going to be the story. Do I want my gap in the middle, or do I want my gaps in the end? And I think I want my gaps in the end, because this will pull together nicely right here. And then I have some leftover pieces here, just stuff when I'm trimming. But then at the same time, it's not that big of a deal. I can just I can take one piece from over here and just keep cutting little things and just shoving them in. I researched the staples I'm using. And yeah, people use the handheld stapler, but it's still, approximately the same size. I got 1/2-inch staples, so it should work. Mine are narrower than a lot of staples because these are for crown molding, so they're only a 1/4 inch. So that I get is probably not as good as a wider staple. However, I feel like long as it's holding, who cares? It's working well, but I think I'm going to have to go get some insulation holders, those pins that go across, so there's 24 inchers. And say, for instance, that one right there, it doesn't even really look like I need to do it, but I'll just stick them in where I need to. So maybe one in the middle of that one in maybe the middle. So the ones that are kind of saggy, I could stick one in the middle and it'll just hold it up a little bit. But I honestly, because I'm inexperienced and I don't know, maybe there's some way I can research it, I don't know. Is it that big of a deal that the insulation's hanging down a little bit? And can drywall guys just push up against it? It's not heavy or anything because it's stapled. Do I need to put supports or not? That's an added expense and an added amount of time. But you can tell that one, it needs it pretty good. So I think it's because these ones, I thought it was in its advantage that it's hanging over that 2x4 so it had more support, but actually because there's no staples in that side, it's pulling out this way some. So I think that's part of the deal. All right, I will show you guys what I'm doing here in a little bit. I'm trying to get a system down. And so what I do now too is I measure these down on the floor. As you can see, I cut like around stuff, and then say behind this 2x4 that's right there, I cut that, and then I had the piece laying here on the floor, what I cut off, stick that up, and then go and stick that stuff back in there on top of the 2x4. This is not being smashed down by anything. It just, I don't know, maybe it needs more time to fluff out because you can see it's not as thick as that piece. I noticed some of them are a little bit squished compared to other ones, but I'm assuming over time they'll kind of air out, poof up. Especially when it gets warm, it'll probably poof. All right, it's definitely a time-consuming job, and it's taking more time than I want, but it is what it is. The fact that I have only one cutout over here, right there, that board, is going to make things go a lot faster. This one, I have a cutout right there, that board, and these three. And I'm going to have these all the way down. So that's just an added kind of pain. At least these are just, I just slice down and then push over it. But these boards that are the supporters, the ones that are higher up, not a big deal. I don't even really have to cut them. But the ones that are down here a little bit lower, I need to cut around. So actually, I'm looking encouraged right there. That goes up high enough that I probably don't have to cut around that one. Just till the end of this one. All right, back to work.
I wanted to show you what I'm doing. I came up with a little bit better method than I started out with. You do things, you start out when you don't know what you're doing and just do whatever and learn as you go. And then I watched a couple of videos. The one thing I can tell you is I'm not using the right stapler, but I knew that could happen. The stapler's still working, and I wanted a crown molding stapler. Like, I'm going to be able to use that for other stuff. So instead of getting a bunch of different tools, this stapler seems to be working good enough. And that way I got a tool that I can use for a bunch of different stuff instead of getting one tool that only works on the one thing. Also, I am going through more staples, so it's costing me more on staples. But I'm still satisfied with it. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up and show you what I'm doing here. All right, as you can see, I did a cutout for that. I did a cutout for the 2x4. I have this pushed up against the other one pretty decently. So what I found out is these have little lips on them. All this paper here. Over there is crumpling it up and just stapling it, which is not going to be any different than this, but this just looks better. See, in that case, I just wasted a bunch of staples because it's not, the paper is tearing. Some hold and some don't. They hold better when it's this way. When your staple is vertical, perpendicular to this. If it's horizontal, it doesn't hold as well. I just now learned that.
So that's how I'm doing that. As you can see over there, it's a little messy looking, see? But this is what I figured out with the way that goes down. It just staples nicer. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Let me see if I can get this real close. See how that staple is poking out, and that one too? A couple of them aren't in all the way. Probably because it hit like a knot or a hard spot in there. Or I just wasn't lined up perfectly. So I watched some videos and I noticed that, hey, that would line up nicely on the 2x4 on the outside, and you could staple it that way. And sure enough, it's designed that you can do that as well. But the guy had a very valid point on the video. He says if you're stapling it to the front of that board and your staples don't go all the way in, which there you go, there's a bunch of them don't, you got to go back and tap all that with your hammer and get them all in, because the drywall guy is going to have a problem with that. So when you put it in like this, I feel like it probably holds it slightly better as well. But the payoff is you don't have any staples on that fascia part that the drywall is going to go against, and you don't have to worry about that. Also, just a dumb thing, but I noticed this knife came with a holster, basically a sheath. That is so necessary. I never would have thought about that or thunk it, but it's very necessary because you're carrying that knife around. You don't want to have to go chase it. It just hooks on your belt or on the top of your top of your pants. But you're always cutting things instead of having to go chase down your knife and find it. Or if you're up there and you're like, oh, I need to cut like a little bit more right here, you're right there with your knife. So I like my gun, it hangs on my ladder like that. That pays off really nicely too. So that's where we're at. That's what I'm doing, and I'm just working my way across. It'll be exciting to get over here. Like I said, at least that section. There's nothing I have to cut on this. So what I do is, I'll show you really quick, is I will pull this piece out like that, lay it down, and when I have to cut something, I go up and I measure, and then I take my knife and I cut this all out, and then I take it up. Also, as you can see, this is serrated. Very necessary. Now I realize that a razor blade would not work well, especially this stuff is like a foot thick too. So this cuts nicely. And the other thing I found out how to use this knife, since it's serrated, is don't cut like you do with a razor blade. You saw it a little bit because it's serrated. So it cuts super nice that way, and just all works out. So I'm learning some things. Learning on the ceilings. I maybe should have decided to do underneath, in the floor area first. That would have been an easier way to learn, but it's all good. I'm figuring it out. All right, circumstances forced me to go ahead and I filled this in. It doesn't look great, but it's got a bunch of stuff stuffed in there. Then I stuffed some down in there, in that spot, and I cut a piece off and stuck it in here. These ones, I don't know how they reach the ends. So you can see up in there, they're all the way. I don't know if you can see that or not, but they're all the way in. So good news on that. Working from that middle section to the out is what I'm going to keep doing, so that if I have to put something in, it's easier to squeeze it in there, I think, than putting it up here.
Basically, you got this strip. It fits in there very nicely, and you can go to town right away. It only fits about that long of a strip. You can't put more in there. Okay, guys, I'm wrapping it up a little bit earlier than I planned to. It's only 2:30. But talking to Valia on the phone, she had a pretty smart idea, because I've been doing this. I got 5 rows done. I mentioned to her, I said, I hope I'm doing this right, because I don't know what are their requirements, what are they looking for. So she suggested, why don't you take a few photos and just swing by the county and make sure that's what you need to be doing, and that you wouldn't have to, that you can correct whatever you need to be correcting and doing it correctly if need be, if I'm doing it wrong. Or they could, I don't know what the inspection, I was thinking inspection could be merely they coming out and verify that I at least put some insulation in. Or they could be coming in and really looking and making sure that there's some particular codes or rules that are supposed to be done a certain way and make sure I did it that way. I don't know. So I feel like it's up to us about how efficient it is, but this is some pretty thick stuff. When I go through the wires, it seems to kind of mess it up a little bit, because I cut down through there and I cut it down on the ground. The first time I cut it up with it up there, and I didn't like that because I was afraid of cutting the wires. So it doesn't come out perfectly. I measure from where the last piece was and I measure down. However, from one side to the other is a little bit different, because these guys just ran the wire. They didn't do a specific distance between each wire. So it was a little bit of a pain, and then you get up there and you try to pull it up and out and whatever. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to find out if it's necessary. The questions I'm going to ask first, I'll just see if it looks okay to them. If it looks okay, I might not say anything, but I might ask them, should I be putting supports on the spots that are kind of bubbled, and do I need to tape these joints? Now, I've seen stuff before, and I've not seen tape. I've seen some videos and stuff when I'm researching for how to put this stuff in, or just looking at videos of it, and I've never seen anybody tape it. But I did find that some people said you need to tape it, and then on the same article, people said it's not necessary, you don't need to do that. If it makes you happy, go ahead, do it, but it's not necessary. So if it's not necessary, I'm not doing it. I don't need to be doing anything extra. I don't think taping this is going to do much of anything. I get it. It's creating more of a moisture barrier, but I mean, how much moisture barrier can you do? So anyway, that's where I'm at. So these are a bundle, one bundle like this or whatever, and there's 4 of them. So far I've done 5 rows. I've got
3 bats left over here and a partial bat over here. And I still have a whole one of these left. So based on that, I should be able to complete this whole thing up to that wall with what I've got here and then one more of these. So then I would have 2 left over there to do all that end. So I have a feeling it's going to take most of it. I didn't expect that because it's supposed to cover over 1,000 square feet. I don't know. I guess to this wall is probably a little bit more than halfway. And there is a lot of cutting around things and whatever over there. So we'll see. We'll see. It'd be really awesome if I had a couple to return that I could get a little bit of a refund back. But anyway. All right, guys. The plan is to go to the county, ask my questions. If I need to buy anything, go buy it for tomorrow. So I'm doing it right. All right, guys. I will see you the next time I'm out here.